Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the fourth branch program, the first and only program dedicated exclusively to those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Today, we're gonna continue the debate, the discussion regarding the similarities and the differences between Donald Trump, US President of the United States, and Adolf Hitler, who was Chancellor of Germany in 1933. So before we begin, we will come back to give you a brief overview of what we brief refreshing of what we discussed last time, so that you can be on the same page. And we will also take the opportunity now to do a little bit of what I would call housekeeping. And what I mean by that is, since I begun the announcement to make a comparison between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler, I think it's probably redundant to say how many individuals have contacted me, not in a good way, to give me a piece of their mind. And I consider the reaction not so much tremendously negative, but rather sad. And the reason I said that is because I never have any argument, debate, or discussion regarding which party any individual decide to support or not, because ideologies, just like religion, are a very difficult thing to debate. It's a matter of preferences and wherever your state of mind is, and that's what you decide to where you decide to be. However, I find it sad because of the fact that most of the conversation that I had with most of the people who actually oppose the very idea of discussing the similarities between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler, I found that their reactions are very much based on a very high level of ignorance. And I say that, and I will address that particular statement shortly. But let's take just a short break. We'll come back to talk about it. And until one is armed with the level of knowledge that is necessary in order for you to have a discussion about any topic, any argument just prove not only ignorance but also a lack of desire to learn. So, and the very purpose of this, which we will talk about too shortly when we return. So hang on for a minute or two. We will come back to discuss, is it fair to compare Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler? I am MD and this is the fourth branch program. The United States of America is in a serious crisis. The biggest problem, the crisis that the country is going through now, is to have a network that's called itself news, but that says nothing about news. That's only telling lies, create controversies, and at the same time educating millions of people to stay or become ignorant. There is nothing that is said by Sean Hannity, there is nothing that is said at Fox that is true. So when I say the country is in a crisis, this is not an exaggeration.
Don't go anywhere. It will be just a moment. Join me here on the 4th branch at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday.
That is some group of people, thousands. So nice, thank you very much. That's really nice, thank you. It's great to be at Trump Tower. It's great to be in a wonderful city, New York. And it's an honor to have everybody here. This is beyond anybody's expectations. There's been no crowd like this. We used to have victories, but we don't have them. When was the last time anybody saw us beating, let's say, China in a trade deal? They kill us. I beat China all the time.
Donald Trump has transformed America in ways no one could ever anticipate. One can only guess where the country will be at the end of his presidency. We have, however, captured the journey to the Oval Office in the book entitled Defiant for America. They said he didn't have the guts to run for public office. He proved them wrong. They said his presidential bid would not last a few weeks. He proved them wrong. They said he could not become the nominee. He proved them wrong. Get a copy of this book and follow Donald Trump in his journey to make America great again. Found at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere online. Get your own copy today.
Hello again, I am MD and you are on the 4th branch program. I do want to clear a few items before tackling the issue or the topic of the day, which is debating the similarities between Donald Trump, current president of the United States, and Adolf Hitler, who was the Chancellor of Germany between 1933 and 1945. First, I want to make very clear that the 4th branch program is not a program for a particular political ideology. In other words, this is not a program for Democrats or a program for Republicans. It's not a program for independent. It's a program for American citizens. It's a program for the country. It's a program which is mostly geared towards individuals who are more concerned about the country than they are about their own political party. In other words, I am very certain that I will debate topics, issues, mostly social political, which mean topics that are sensitive. socio-political topics that some you will agree with and some you will not. But nevertheless, the program itself is not geared towards supporting a point of view, the Republican point of view or a Democrat point of view. This is not the objective of the fourth branch. We have a very specific objective, and we mention it every time we have a chance in announcement. A program dedicated to individuals with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. This is the objective of the fourth branch. In other words, we do not choose topic just for the sake of supporting a particular party, political party, to the detriment of the other party. Yes, as I mentioned, that some topics, just like the one today, I am certain that people who support Donald Trump are not happy with the debate, the discussion about the topic, because to those individuals, it's because I belong to the Democrat Party. But let me assure you, my objective and the objective of the fourth branch is apolitical. In other words, we decide to debate a topic, we decide to debate an issue because there is a certain level of importance in doing that. And I will quote you a few. There is the first, the aspect of ignorance that I mentioned earlier. Ignorance, Plato, a philosopher Greek who lives in 427 BC, mentioned that ignorance is the root and the stem of all evil. In other words, if you decide to stay in ignorance, it is very certain that you will contribute towards things that are evil, towards things that do not benefit society, may even stretch it as far as do not benefit your own family. So ignorance is not a virtue, and ignorance is not something to embrace and to feel proud of. I remember during the 2016 presidential campaign, there are a number of Trump supporters who actually were chanting the idea of being considered ignorant, uneducated, and so on. And it was very sad for me to observe that, because I know that ignorance actually is a tool used to destroy. Ignorance is the biggest threat to democracy. So there is no joy in being ignorant. There is no joy in embracing ignorance. And a few weeks ago, I think I may have even mentioned in one of my tweets that ignorance is not personal and it's not private. It is a heavy burden on families, and it also a very heavy burden on society. So there is no pride in being ignorant. There is no pride whatsoever, nothing to cheer about to be ignorant. So how does that fit into the conversation today? Well, there is also another aspect that I'd like to usually refer to. In fact, the last time that we talk about this particular topic, in fact, today is considered to be the fourth time that we are debating different aspects of the comparison between Hitler and Donald Trump. And last Saturday, I debated the fact that George Santaniah mentioned that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And I actually had quite a different twist on that statement from George Santaniah, I came up with the statement that those who ignore the past will be forced to relive it. Those who ignore the past will be forced to relive it. So this is in light of this statement that I find it absolutely necessary to revisit the past. Now, why not compare Donald Trump with somebody else? Well, number one, it's something that Donald Trump has triggered a very long time ago. It's not while he's in the Oval Office. It's during the time he was running for the post of the presidency of the United States, that a number of statements he had made and a number of behavior, a certain behavior that he had displayed, anyone who studies history will not have a difficult time to quickly remember who else in history behaved that way, who else in history made those kind of statements. And one of the gesture that, as you see on the announcement itself, where I parallel the picture of Adolf Hitler with his arm extended like in hell, in a Hail Mary, and Donald Trump doing the same thing to an audience who was at his rally. So that's since then I was researching various aspects of the personality of Donald Trump, and having studied world history, of course I had to refresh, to do a kind of a refreshing of the material that I learned at school, to kind of find where does Donald Trump fit in that picture. How is he compared to Adolf Hitler? Now, comparing Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler is fine, but to what purpose? That's a very question. To what purpose do you compare Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler? So I do understand the concern, and I do understand the anger from the people who support Donald Trump, that they would not want their role model to be compared to Adolf Hitler. Now, there is also another reason that most Donald Trump supporters are more upset about the comparison than they are about what that means. In other words, they're not at all concerned that the comparison is not just for the sake of comparison, because I do not bring a topic for discussion just for the sake of discussing the topic. As I mentioned in the very beginning of this project, that the purpose of the project is not for the sake of discussion, and it's not news either, because all other organizations, broadcasting organizations, newspapers, digital papers now, all of those entities are there reporting the news, analyzing the news, and so on. Now, every now and then, I may find myself in a predicament of tackling some information that are on the news and trying to parallel it with a topic, or rather insert it in a topic, and at least conclude as to what that means in terms of our lives. Because the very point of the Fourth Branch Project is to bring something of importance to the surface, and at the same time suggest a solution, suggest an alternative, or at least make it simple enough for anyone in the audience to be able to come to the conclusion that there is something that needs to be done about this particular issue. So really, that's the outline of the project. So if you are a Democrat and you think because I am debating I'm discussing the comparison between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler, and that's great because it makes you feel good, or if you're a Republican, it makes you feel bad. Now, rest assured that the point of the discussion will come clear shortly, because as I mentioned, it's not just for the sake of discussion, it's not just for the sake of talking about a topic, but it is rather so that we can learn from the past, so that we don't repeat the same mistake of the future. Now, I'm not under any illusion that anybody and everybody who happened to be lucky enough to stumble on this particular discussion, I say lucky, it's because it's with the there is a sea of video out there. There is no lack of video that are made on a daily basis and that are all available to everybody. So when you stumble on something that can be used for the purpose of furthering your life, of improving your life, or at least helping you change something in life, change something in society, I call it luck, because in this particular environment that we're in, this particular topic, the comparison between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump, is of tantamount importance for the environment, for the political environment where we at. Again, it is important because those who ignore the past will be forced to relive it. So we cannot ignore the past, because the past, we cannot live in the past, because it would defeat the whole point of living. So we cannot live in the past, but we cannot dwell in the past, but we should learn from the past in order to prevent repeating the mistakes of the past. I will say one thing before we go take a short break and come back in full-fledged with the discussion. A number of people that I talked to, a number of people that I had a conversation with, including those who have chastised me for even bringing the comparison between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler, I have noticed something that's actually very troubling. Of course, another sad observation of ignorance, that most individuals today, with the internet, you can easily go online and Google anything and find and dig some information about that particular thing, that particular individual, that particular period. But despite that fact, I found it extremely troubling that most individuals seems to only have a very superficial understanding of who Adolf Hitler is. So, and in fact, that was one of the reasons that after observing or following and Donald Trump since the day that he actually made the announcement that he was running for the presidency of the United States, since that day, I have been following Donald Trump in his path up to the point that he became the president of the United States. And everybody, in fact, before, and I may have mentioned that before even those people today who are hardcore supporters of Donald Trump, at the time that I I suggested it was actually good for democracy in the United States for Donald Trump to be listed among the contenders for the presidency. When I mentioned that in an article, none of those people actually was behind Donald Trump, which is kind of ironic, isn't it? That now some of those people, a few of those people, now are coming to bash me, to lambast me about discussing Donald Trump or comparing Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler. Even at the point, I wrote at least 3 articles where I made the case for the importance of Donald Trump being part in the race for the presidency of the United States. For sake of information, I must say in all fairness that I also did later on make it clear that I would not for anything in the world wish that Donald Trump became president of the United States. So of course, all that was discussed really in great detail to explain why I take certain position at some point and other position in other time. But the point I'm trying to make is most of those people who actually feel now that there is so much hardcore supporters of Donald Trump and without any knowledge whatsoever of to what that comparison entails, they already all gung-ho about cursing me, chastising me. In fact, they even hurt my feeling because a number of them who were my followers on Twitter, they had dropped me. And they really hurt my feeling that way because it's sad that without even taking the time to understand what this is all about, they already react to the comparison. And that comparison is extremely important. It's extremely important because, I will repeat it again, those who ignore the past will be forced to relive it. And the past about in history, the past about Adolf Hitler, the gentleman that we are comparing Donald Trump to, is not someone that you would want to find out that the current president of the United States, the person who sits in the Oval Office, has anything that's similar to Adolf Hitler. So you want to find out that, is that even possible? Is it fair? Or is it one of those damn liberals who decide to smear the president of the United States? Well, I will say this. Number one, the Fourth Branch Project is not political. It's apolitical. Well, I say that it's not political. I take that back because we discuss socio-political issues. But the point of the discussion is not to take Democrat side or to take Republican side. Is to provide information so that individuals who are more concerned about the country, individuals who are patriots in the sense of patriot, not just saying they are patriot, but individuals who are patriot. In other words, individuals who are American first, not Democrat first, not Republican first, but American first, can draw from the information and decide, okay, the country needs to take a different direction, or the country is in the correct direction or is in the correct path and we should support or we should remove our support from. So this program is not made for just anybody, and I'm not under any illusion that anybody or everybody who hears the program, even if they were to find out that the conclusion is actually accurate, and we rely exclusively again on facts because we go and dig the important aspect of history and come back with those information and then compare with what is currently going on today in history. So we compare history of the past with history of today, and we let this information be the guide to say, okay, what can possibly happen. Now, I'm not under any illusion that most individuals will do the right thing, because history already taught me that it's never always that simple. In fact, I can cite you a few examples right here in the United States of America, where a civil war happened in the United States because there were millions of people, actually people who are here in the country, American citizens, people who consider themselves patriots. Now, millions of those people were on the wrong side of history. They fought against ending slavery. So when I say that I'm not under any illusion that most people who actually listen to this video or who is watching, people who are currently watching now, I'm not under any illusion that people are just gonna take those facts that we will discuss in a short little while and say, well, we need to do something about it, because history taught me that most people are almost always inclined to take the wrong side of history. So they did that during the time that slavery was to be ended. They did that when, during the passage of the Civil Rights Act, it wasn't unanimous that in Congress everybody voted to pass the Civil Rights Act. It wasn't unanimous that everybody in Congress and the Senate actually went along with passing the women's rights, and so on and so forth. So there are always people, there are always individuals who actually stand on the wrong track of history. Now, the very question is, why? Why would someone who have knowledge stand on the wrong side of history? Now, of course, they can come up with all kind of excuses or explanation for that, but logically speaking, there is never any reason for anyone to stand on the wrong side of history. When it was time to end slavery, it was time to end a practice that was inhuman. So why did we have millions of people, quite hundreds of thousands of them, or rather tens of thousands of them, lost their lives to try to keep something they were doing that's wrong? So I'm not under any illusion when I actually talk about this particular topic, comparing Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler, that everybody will see it logically, because not everybody is logical. And I already learned that. There are millions of people living right here in the United States of America who are living on the wrong side of knowledge, who are living on the wrong side of history, and who will always take the wrong side of history. And the big factor to that is ignorance. Now, I explained last time that ignorance doesn't mean the individual didn't go to school. Ignorance doesn't mean the individual didn't have a college degree or didn't even go to high school. In fact, most of the people who display a high level of ignorance are people who have college degree, master degree, some even a PhD, and yet they display a certain level of ignorance. And the reason for that is not really difficult. And when I come back, I will quickly outline those 3 items which I discuss at length. And if you are interested in this program, and if you are interested in helping moving the country forward, and if you are American first, I strongly encourage you to actually go to People Branch channel on YouTube, where all the past broadcasts, all the past video are located in the People Branch channel on YouTube, so that at least you can see not only firsthand but contemporaneously what we are discussing on the Fourth Branch Project in order to help move the country forward, because we cannot to do nothing in this a political environment is not an option. No American citizen, no patriot can simply cross his or her arm and let everybody else worry about what needs to happen, what must happen. So when I come back, we'll quickly discuss the three main factors which have contributed to the level of ignorance in the country, and which in turn is a major problem for the United States of America, because ignorance is the biggest threat to democracy. There is no if and but about it. Ignorance is the biggest threat to democracy. So we cannot live in ignorance. We cannot let this aspect of life destroy the very country that people from the world over rush to come to enjoy the freedom that we have, to enjoy the privileges that we have. And all that is made possible because of democracy that we have in the country. So democracy is a major factor which has attracted people from the world over. And I just mentioned that ignorance is the biggest threat to democracy. Any democracy, ignorance is the biggest threat. And I also just mentioned that there is a high level of ignorance in the country. So if you put two and two together, it should be obvious where I'm leading to. Ignorance is the biggest threat to democracy, and ignorance is rampant in the United States. Now, what's causing that? Again, when we come back, we will address the three factors that causing ignorance in the United States, and we will move on very quickly to talk about the topic of the day, which is, can we compare Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler? You are watching the Fourth Branch program. I'll be right back.
In 1996, a small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy, constantly bombarding the airwaves with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies, presenting to its audience as news. Fox has created an army of blissful ignorant. According to a recent survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, Democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore.
Join me here on the 4th branch at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday.
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically, I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, The Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good read for both liberals and conservatives.
Don't go anywhere. The Fourth Branch program will return in just a moment.
Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question? One answer is located on the People Branch website, link of which is provided below. There are three major aspects which creates ignorance, or which helps spread ignorance in the United States. Three major aspects. Again, I discussed it before, so I'm not going to spend a great deal of time in it, but I'll just provide a little bit of refreshing into the topic. All broadcasts, all videos, past videos are located on the People Branch YouTube channel. So if you are interested, this is where to find them. Again, the People Branch is not a Democrat, is not a Republican program. It is a program dedicated to those who are American first. Now, you may have seen in one of the video, actually in two videos, where I made mention of the word ignorance, and I even wrote a few articles to that effect. In the very first video, I mentioned that 82% of Fox viewers, according to a survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. This is alarming. It is very alarming because those same individuals are the ones that one cannot have any logical conversation, any rational conversation cannot be held with anyone who actually is a faithful audience of Trump, a faithful audience of Fox. And the reason is because day in, day out, they hear the exact same thing. They live the exact same thing. It becomes almost a brainwashing, 24/7 brainwashing session. So it is very difficult if you take any of those individuals and you remove them from the Fox brainwashing environment, it's not possible to have a conversation. So Fox is the primary and the major culprit in spreading ignorance in the United States of America. And I don't say that lightly, because when you have a network with well over 100 million people regularly watching that network, and what they're getting out of the network is falsehood, distortion of facts, they very rarely take something and discuss it. And I'm not referring to people who have a mindset and ideology like discussing something that you would call, this is what Republicans believe in. That's not what I'm referring to. I can take an example. For instance, Republicans are inclined to be against same-sex marriage. This is not what I'm referring to, because this is a position, this is an ideology. I'm referring to the fact that they can take anything that is said and distort it to the point that the audience actually is partly responsible for the problem. And I again explained all that in the previous video. It's because the audience craves for those kind of information. They have an emotional deficiency that they want to feel. So Fox exploit that weakness. It is very dangerous because when you have a network that, for the sake of making money, because that's the only reason that they do that, for the sake of making money, that they exploit people's weakness, which is ignorance, and continue to nurture that ignorance to the detriment of the country. Ignorance is the biggest threat to democracy. And you have a network with over 100 million people who day in, day out does only one thing: provide nothing but lies, distortion of facts, and outright falsehoods. So they create an army of people who are ignorant, and what makes matter worse is the fact that those people are not even aware of the fact that they are in ignorance. And I said in previous video that the ignorant are ignorant of their ignorance. How do you help people who believe what they believe, but which is false, and try to help those people? So I know that Fourth Branch has a very tough job ahead, because the biggest obstacle to achieving a perfect union is not because there are so many differences between Democrat and Republican. It's not because people are so different. It's because there is a very large group in the country who live in ignorance, who are not even aware of the fact they live in ignorance, because the source of ignorance is where they get information day in, day out, and they wouldn't go anywhere else to find out that they've been living in that ignorance. That's Fox. The second aspect of ignorance is the legislature. Now that may sound a little bit weird, and by legislators I really mean both Democrat and Republican. I'm not just talking about Republican. It's both Democrat and Republican. Those people are responsible for spreading ignorance in the United States. But contrary to Fox, that does that for the sake of making money, legislators in Washington, especially today, you may go along with what Republican legislators are doing today, because, well, you are a Republican and they doing your bidding. But everything that today that Republicans in Washington are doing is not for the sake of representing the people that they say that they are in Washington for, but it's rather to preserve their job to the detriment of the country. So the second major group that contribute a great deal to spreading ignorance in the country is the legislators in Washington. Again, as I say, it's both Democrat and Republican, but today, since Donald Trump has been in the Oval Office, the Republicans have been at the forefront, actually spreading falsehoods that amplified by Fox. So those two groups work hand in hand to spread falsehood in the country and keep people in ignorance. And I can take you a very simple example. Republican knew ahead of time that the $1.5 billion tax cut that they wanted to pass, and they were out there telling people they're going to get a huge tax cut, they knew for a fact most of the tax cuts were for large corporations and wealthy individuals. They knew that. But they spread the falsehoods, they spread the lies, and those lies were amplified by Fox, and people who actually live in that environment believed those lies and they supported it. So why did Republicans do that? It's because it benefits them, because they cater to deficiency of emotion in the Republican circle. Republicans crave for their emotions, their ego, to be fed on a regular basis. And that's how Fox is able to manage to stay the #1 station for decades. They cater to emotion, they satisfy the craving of its audience, and that helps them stay on top. We know that Fox doesn't do anything resembling the news, and yet year after year after year they continue to occupy the top spot in broadcasting. So how do you reconcile the very fact, it's not something anybody is telling anyone in this country, how do you reconcile the fact that a network that's spreading lies, falsehood, and distorting facts continue to occupy the top spot in terms of the size of its audience? The answer is very simple. It caters to their weakness. It caters to their emotion, because it seems that Republican constituents, they crave for someone to always stoke their ego. They want to be satisfied. They want someone to come and tell them that they're in the right place. They thinking in the right way. When in fact, the same individual, if in fact anyone were to be smart enough to understand that very predicament, I don't have to come and tell you that. Why do you think the President of the United States bypass all other stations and just go to Fox? It's supposed to be the President of the United States, not the President of the Republican Party. It's supposed to be the President of the United States. In other words, it's supposed to talk to every station so that people who listen to different stations can hear the President. Why do you think every Republican wants to lie, go to Fox? It's because that's where the audience is. And they know the audience is very receptive to what they have to say. So that brings me to the third group that's destroying the country. Democracy is destroyed by ignorance. Ignorance is the biggest threat to democracy. As it stands today, Fox's audience is ignorant for the most part, 82% according to survey. Ignorant. In other words, our democracy is in serious jeopardy. Now the third group, although to no fault of its, is the Republican constituent. Yes, they have been fed lies. They've been living in la la land. I understand that. But they too have the responsibility to look for information elsewhere and find out whether what they're being fed is false. They listen to Fox, they pay attention to the president tweet, and nothing else matters. Now, the reason it is that important is because the topic we are going to talk about, the comparison between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler, that topic that we're going to talk about requires a certain level of knowledge. So the idea or the focus or the objective of the fourth branch is to educate, but only to those who want to be educated. It is said that there are two types of fool in the world: those who cannot change and those who will not change. Now, I do understand that the second group, the first group, I'm not sure how to address that. But the second group, who will not change, there are factors that are responsible for the second group, those who will not change. Is because if you are bombarded every single day with information that please you, not because they are good information, not because they are correct information, but because it pleases you, it satisfies your pride, it satisfies your emotion, why would you go anywhere else? And you continue to live in ignorance. Now, it may be good for you, but definitely not good for future generation. So what you consider today as something that benefits your ego, benefits your emotion, actually is very bad for the future of the country, because your kids, your grandkids may end up living in a country that no longer offers the opportunity that you currently enjoy. So why would you want that? Why would anybody want that? So it is indeed sad when you hear someone cheering the idea of being ignorant. And the worst part is, when you talking to an ignorant person with a college degree, the job becomes twice as hard. An ignorant with a college degree. That doesn't mean people without a college degree are easier to talk to. And I want to make clear that the fourth branch is not about you having to agree with everything that we say, because we try at best as possible to bring to the conversation information, some of which can be easily verified, and conversation that would stand the test of logic. That's what we try to bring, not an ideology, not a political partisanship. Again, as I mentioned, and I will repeat it as often and as much as I have the privilege to host this program, that It is not about convincing you of an idea. It is not about convincing anyone of an idea. It is not about convincing you to become a Democrat or to become a Republican. It's about telling you how important it is to be an American first. Being a Republican satisfy your ego, satisfy your emotion, satisfy your fragile emotion temporarily. So you need someone to constantly helping you feel good. That's why you prefer lies over information, correct information about truth. That's why you argue even when you see that where you at, what you're doing, or your argument is wrong. It becomes how about that person. It's easy to spot when someone who is ignorant of a particular situation, of a particular topic, it's easy to see when they lose the argument. It's always how about this other thing. The minute you see that, this is a very important sign to look at whenever you're having a conversation with someone about the country, about politics, about social issues, about anything that help perfect the union. Once you start hearing about that individual, about that person, you know the individual recognizes that you are right and he or she is wrong. So in order to model the argument, the discussion, the next step is how about. So we're going to come back and we're going to discuss, can we compare Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler? And what is the purpose of doing that? Stay tuned. We'll be right back. The United States of America is in a serious crisis. The biggest problem, the crisis that the country is going through now, is to have a network that's called itself news, but that says nothing about news. That's only telling lies, create controversies, and at the same time educating millions of people to stay or become ignorant. There is nothing that is said by Sean Hannity, there is nothing that is said at Fox that is true. So when I say the country is in a crisis, this is not an exaggeration.
Don't go anywhere. It will be just a moment. Join me here on the 4th branch at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday.
That is some group of people, thousands. So nice. Thank you very much. That's really nice. Thank you. It's great to be at Trump Tower. It's great to be in a wonderful city, New York. And it's an honor to have everybody here. This is beyond anybody's expectations. There's been no crowd like this. We used to have victories, but we don't have them. When was the last time anybody saw us beating, let's say, China in a trade deal? They kill us. I beat China all the time.
Donald Trump has transformed America in ways no one could ever anticipate. One can only guess where the country will be at the end of his presidency. We have, however, captured the journey to the Oval Office in the book entitled Defiant for America. They said he didn't have the guts to run for public office. He proved them wrong. They said his presidential bid would not last a few weeks. He proved them wrong. They said he could not become the nominee. He proved them wrong. Get a copy of this book and follow Donald Trump in his journey to make America great again. Found at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere online. Get your own copy today. The ignorant are ignorant of their ignorance. Now this is a recipe for disaster, because you cannot even reason with someone who's already so deep into his or her ignorance and try to make a light of it, because they heard something on Fox said by Sean Hannity, Fox and friends, and this become the base for conversation. This become the foundation of their knowledge to argue with other people. How do you convince an ignorant person who is ignorant of his or her ignorance that he is ignorant? How do you do that? So when I say that the country is in a serious crisis, this is not an exaggeration.
Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch Project, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively to those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. The Fourth Branch Project seeks to emphasize country over party. Its primary objective is to restore interest in civic duty and involvement in social, political issues, discussion, debate, which might impact lives in this generation and quite possibly in future ones. Put differently, the Fourth Branch Project is a journey towards restoring America's greatness, where patriotism is the foundation of every decision, every policy, every word, every action. Said differently, it is a journey to save democracy in America. Stay with us. We will be right back. Hello again, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch program, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively to those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. The topic of the day is, can we compare Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler? Now, I don't know there is any need to actually talk about Donald Trump because there is enough information in about Donald Trump that's been in the news since the day that he stepped foot in the political ring to vie for the office of the presidency. But one aspect I actually want to talk about very quickly is the rise of Adolf Hitler to becoming Chancellor of Germany. Now, I talked in briefly last time about Adolf Hitler, but not really without much detail as to how did it come about. And one of the things that always I guess I always feel it's necessary for anybody that who is interested in studying a particular individual should have a certain level of understanding as to why a particular individual behave a certain way. Now, most people, whenever you mention the name Adolf Hitler, it's automatically associated with a monster in the past. A monster, if they can make the connection between World War II and Adolf Hitler, they make that connection. If not, they know he was a dictator, a monster. But that actually doesn't really help much if we just start from there and try to understand the comparison between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump. If we just take it from the point where most people understand where Hitler come from in terms of why how he behaved during the time in history where now it's referred to as one of the most cruel head of state in the 20th century, then that would not serve much purpose. So let's start and fly over Mr. Hitler live to get a sense of his upbringing. First, Adolf Hitler was born in, according to history, his great-grandfather, actually it wasn't in Germany that Adolf Hitler was born. He was born in Austria, or part of actually Austria and Hungary, and later on history would tell you that that become actually part of Germany. But for sake of conversation, he was born in Austria, and his great grandfather actually was someone who no one would be able to look at his ancestors and decide that at some point that family is gonna give rise to a monster. It's probably always that way anyway in life in general, that you cannot look at somebody's lineage and say, we should have seen that coming. But one aspect I always try to understand, and which I'll make the point now and then come back to it later to discuss, and most likely much later to discuss a part of Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of Germany that's talked about a lot. So Adolf Hitler was born in 1933. Now, I kind of give you an idea of he is a baby Hitler. Now, like any other baby, if you look at this adorable baby, there is no way in the world that someone could be looking at that baby and assume or even fathom the idea that this adorable baby would later on become what we know Adolf Hitler was. Adolf Hitler was actually born on April 1933. Now, that adorable baby is Adolf Hitler. Now, there is something that happened. Of course, today we deal with this aspect of life differently, maybe because we are smarter. We have science has helped a great deal. But Adolf Hitler was born in a family of actually 6 individuals. 3 of them died pretty quickly after their birth. In fact, one of those siblings who died happened to have been a younger brother of Adolf. His name was Edmund, and according to history, that Adolf Hitler actually changed almost drastically when that happened. Now, again, as I said, today we would have said, well, maybe we take the kid to see a psychologist so that at least the psychologist can help with helping the child grow or cope over the death, whatever the case is. But the fact remains that he was born and in a family where 3 of his siblings died very early after their birth. And I think Adolf Hitler was 10 years old, if I'm not mistaken, when boy, get my facts wrong. I said Adolf Hitler was born in 1933. Actually, that is not so. 1933 is when Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. I apologize for that. I guess I'm fast forwarding to the future a little bit too early. I think Adolf Hitler was born in 1891, maybe, around that time frame. But he was born in April of 1891, maybe 1892. Anyway, so when he was just 10 years old, his sibling Edmund, who was just born just a few months, actually died. I am not sure of his rapprochement with the brother, whatever the case was, but he must have been very fond of the brother. According to history, he was devastated, and since then, Adolf was never the same. And the part of the history that I want to focus on is, number one, it is said, it's an anecdote, it's never really verified by historian, but it is believed that Adolf Hitler's mother was a maid who used to work in a Jewish house. Again, it's anecdote. It's the reason I mentioned that I always try to understand why again certain people behave a certain way in history. And if you recall history about Adolf Hitler, one of the facts that mention a lot every time that the Adolf Hitler is talked about is the massacre of 6 million Jews. And you always have to ask the question as to what kind of, did he have a beef with the Jews? Is it why it's almost like a vendetta that he had to eliminate, to eradicate, to completely erase that group on the face of the earth? Now, was it personal? Again, according to rumors, his mother used to work as a maid in a Jewish place. Now, I must quickly say that Adolf Hitler himself, in his autobiography, Mein Kampf, I don't know if I say that right, but it's a German word which translates to my struggle. He actually never mentioned any such thing in regards to his mother. Whether he used that anecdote as a reason, maybe they used to tease him about that. Whatever the case is, it's a piece of information that I personally don't have, that historian actually denied that ever happened. But for one reason or another, it's an anecdote that keeps going around and around, and I'm certain that during Hitler's time, it's something that probably as a kid he may have been teased about that. So that may help to put in perspective the reason that maybe, just maybe, it was a way to punish the Jews. Maybe he figured that maybe Jews were the one who put that story out. I don't know. But whatever the case is, it seems that there is some sort of connection between having to go, why not 10 million or 6 million people of a different nation? Why not 6 million English people? Why not 6 million Russian people, etc., etc.? But 6 million Jews. So we'll come back to that in a minute. But after the death of his sibling Edmund, it looks like Adolf Hitler was never be the same again. According to history, his father was actually what you would call a very conservative individual. He wants his kids to go to school, to do well in school. In fact, he wanted Adolf Hitler, to follow his footsteps. I think the father used to work for some sort of bureaucracies in Austria, and at some point he used to take younger Hitler to his workplace so that he can get him accustomed to what he did. And hoping that Hitler would later on be doing those kind of things as well. But history told us that Hitler was not interested in those things. Interestingly enough, he was mostly interested in art. He loved to draw things, and if you really start following his footsteps, he's being rejected as he's going along, and he's having events in his life that in today's world, it's a child who would have spent a great amount of time with a psychologist or a psychiatrist because of the life that he lived. First, he lost 3 siblings, younger age, adolescent, toddler's age. He lost those siblings. That's number one. And number two, he had a father who actually wanted him to be a certain way, and he refused to be that way. He wanted to be his own person. He actually loved art, and that's what he was doing. He was drawing, but the father kept beating him so that he would go to school and study something in the line of business that the father was in, so that he could follow the father's footsteps. So he, according to history, Adolf Hitler was doing pretty bad in school. He was a troubled child. Later on, we would learn, again in his autobiography, we would learn that, according to him, we would learn that he actually was doing bad in school because he actually wanted to do bad in school. He actually was defying his father. He wanted his father to leave him alone. In Mein Kampf, My Struggle, he himself said that he did that on purpose because he didn't like the idea that his father wanted him to be a person that he didn't want to be. Now, nothing unusual about that. We have a lot of that here. In fact, a lot of kids, a lot of children, they defy their parents. That doesn't make them susceptible to become another Adolf Hitler. That doesn't do it at all. So Adolf Hitler was, by any analysis, a normal child, except for the fact that he suffers a lot of emotional roller coaster in his life. So he was being beaten by the father to become something that he didn't want to be. So he was doing bad in school, and of course that also marred his life, because later on, when the father finally gave in or gave up, whichever one fits the conversation, when the father finally gave in to Adolf Hitler's interest, which is art, and they wanted he wanted to actually enroll him in a school where he would pursue his dream, he wasn't accepted. And the reason he wasn't accepted is because, think of it this way, if you want to enroll at Harvard, there are certain criteria that you ought to meet. There are certain criteria that you ought to meet, because Harvard requires that you have a certain GPA in school in order to be accepted. Now, Adolf Hitler couldn't be accepted to into the school that I guess would be considered one of the greatest schools where he would pursue the dream of his life, but he was rejected because he didn't have the grade. And the reason he didn't have the grade is because he was doing bad in school to, quote unquote, punish his father. So if you following that, there is a certain anger that's being bubbling inside Hitler, because in fact he lost sibling. That's grief, but that sometimes translates into anger, and he's living in an environment where his father wanted him to be something he didn't want to, and the father kept beating him, and that also create anger. So of course he didn't and couldn't beat the father. So what he did the best that any kid would do. He did bad in school, and by doing bad in school, hoping that the father would leave him alone, which at some point it get to that point where the father end up saying, all right, Adolf, let's go and enroll you in school. So try to do that. Now he got rejected. So needless to tell you, as you can see, he's getting angrier and angrier and angrier as time goes by, because of the fact that, well, things weren't going well for him. So he had a tough life. I guess the question is, does that justify what he had become later? He wasn't the first one, he wasn't the only one, but does that justify that he became what he became? The short answer is no, but we cannot deny the fact that that helped shape who Adolf Hitler became. Right? Because you cannot take Adolf Hitler out of context as if he were just that individual, that monster that just came aboard at some point, dropped from the sky, or came from wherever, and then suddenly he became that monster. When you look at that little baby's face, and if you forget the rest of the history for a moment, and you hearing what Hitler, little Adolf, was going through as a baby, the most you get, or your reaction would be sadness, not anger, but sadness, that to see that from a very young age, from a very early age, you see that little baby start having problem. He didn't just lose one sibling at birth or close to birth. Lost 3 of them back to back. That is already a lot of sadness for a child. Now couple that with a father who wants things to be done his way, and of course being at school where your instructors see you as a troublemaker. You do not belong there. So the more trouble you cause, the less receptive teachers are to you, and the fewer friends you have. And also, the more angry you get. So Adolf Hitler is following a path, what I would call a destructive path, as a child, as an adolescent, and as a youngster, as a young man, is going through a a series of problem in life that would shape his life. And to make matters worse, when he was just, I think, 18 years old, when he was just 18 years old, I think he was 17, 18 years old, his father passed. So Adolf never really had this life that would point to the fact that he would later become a monster. He had a very troubled life as a child. Now, this is not to say what he did later as the Chancellor of Germany is excusable. That's not what that meant. But it means that those events in his life would contribute to shaping his life. So how many others in his time went through similar predicament but didn't become a monster? Well, we will take a short break, and when we come back, we will talk about Adolf Hitler's life in the armed forces. So we going through this process to present you the individual who later on became the cruelest dictator monster in the 20th century. So that to give you a sense of the action that it took, how did they come about? So stay tuned. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we will talk about Adolf Hitler going in the armed forces. We'll be right back. The United States of America is in a serious crisis. The biggest problem, the crisis that the country is going through now, is to have a network that's called itself news, but that says nothing about news. That's only telling lies, create controversies, and at the same time educating millions of people to stay or become ignorant. There is nothing that is said by Sean Hannity, there is nothing that is said at Fox that is true. So when I say the country is in a crisis, this is not an exaggeration.
Don't go anywhere. It will be just a moment. Join me here on the fourth branch
at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday.
That is some group of people, thousands. So nice. Thank you very much. That's really nice. Thank you. It's great to be at Trump Tower. It's great to be in a wonderful city, New York. And it's an honor to have everybody here. This is beyond anybody's expectations. There's been no crowd like this. We used to have victories, but we don't have them. When was the last time anybody saw us beating, let's say, China in a trade deal? They kill us. I beat China all the time.
Donald Trump has transformed America in ways no one could ever anticipate. One can only guess where the country will be at the end of his presidency. We have, however, captured the journey to the Oval Office in the book entitled Defiant for America. They said he didn't have the guts to run for public office. He proved them wrong. They said his presidential bid would not last a few weeks. He proved them wrong. They said he could not become the nominee. He proved them wrong. Get a copy of this book and follow Donald Trump in his journey to make America great again. Found at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere online. Get your own copy today.
Ignorant are ignorant of their ignorance. Now this is a recipe for disaster, because you cannot even reason with someone who's already so deep into his or her ignorance and try to make a light of it, because they heard something on Fox said by Sean Hannity, Fox and friends, and this become the base for conversation. This become the foundation of their knowledge to argue with other people. How do you convince an ignorant person who is ignorant of his or her ignorance that he is ignorant? How do you do that? So when I say that the country is in a serious crisis, this is not an exaggeration.
Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch Project, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively to those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. The Fourth Branch Project seeks to emphasize country over party. Its primary objective is to restore interest in civic duty and involvement in social, political issues, discussion, debate,
which might impact lives in this generation and quite possibly in future ones. Put differently, the Fourth Branch Project is a journey towards restoring America's greatness, where patriotism is the foundation of every decision, every policy, every word, every action. Said differently, it is a journey to save democracy in America. Stay with us. We will be right back. Hello again. I am MD, and this is the Fourth Branch Project, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. We are talking about Adolf Hitler growing up and becoming Chancellor of Germany. We left talking about Adolf Hitler as an adolescent, and now we're going to be talking a little bit about Adolf Hitler joining the armed forces. After his father passed, a year later, he lost his mother too. So, in line of what we've been talking about, that his life was never a life of what you would call a normal child, and he goes from one bad event after the other. So he pretty much knew sorrow, sadness in his life. So after his father passed, a year later his mother passed, and he was left to fend for himself. According to history, he was pretty much homeless. Interestingly enough, the very love that he had, which is love for art, was what he actually had to use to scrape for money in order to have a semblance of a life. In other words, he was crafting art, drawing things and selling them for what you'd consider a few pennies, so that he could buy. Now, this is the part that I believe not that a previous part of his life had nothing to do with what Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler was shaped by those events, but if in my mind, it's almost like filling a glass, and at some point the last drop is what's gonna cause the liquid to actually spill over. And in my analysis, it seems that it's at that point in Hitler's life that he actually was, I would say, philosophically shaped, because after he lost both of his parents, for a reason that I'm not sure I understand, I don't get anything. I'm certain that there are books that are written in terms of his two other siblings, but the time between him losing his parents and what happened later in his life, there was really no connection between him and his siblings. I'm not sure why, but in any event, after he lost both of his parents and scraping for food, literally struggling, homeless, struggling to survive, Adolf Hitler became what you would consider today radicalized. And by that I meant not by a group, but rather by his own understanding of the world. What he started actually framing his mind to blame a group for his condition. And if you guess which group, and I'm sure that you would be right. So he's struggling, he's on the street, he's homeless, he can barely make a penny to live, but day in, day out, he's watching the wealthy, the rich, laughing, coming from the movies, coming from the museum, buying, strolling. All that contributed to anger Adolf. And the very people that he observed doing that were the Jews. Now, remember earlier I mentioned that there were plenty of anecdotes that pin his birth to, rather the birth of his mother, that pin his mother to have been the maid of a Jewish family, which he denied on his autobiography. But whether that's true or not, whether he denied it for the very reason that he hated the Jews from the very onset, or he hated them because they had lavishing lifestyle, they were wealthy individual, and he was not, his family was struggling, or when he became homeless, that's when he realized that I'm struggling, I don't have a place to live. And look at those people, they have nice houses, building, the businesses belong to them, they laughing, they dancing, they going to parties, they doing things that from all aspect of someone who is homeless is not good. So that kind of predicament, coupled with his life who got shaped with sadness, anger, and now becoming framed out into this picture that is now watching as a young man. That gives him a purpose in life, because now he's looking that he may not be able to do much today, but he sure had a vision. And we know that, and we'll explain that shortly. We know that he had a vision. It's because of what he would do later on. Now, at the age of 24, I believe, he joined the armed forces. So here is a guy that spent his life going through sadness, anger, misery, homeless, and now he joined the armed forces. That is a very dangerous combination. Now, granted, when you join a structured organization such as the armed forces, that shape you and you may become a different person. You may become a very organized individual who see things from a different angle, and now who is in a position to be able to change your life around and become whoever, whatever you so wish. Now that could have been too. But something happened. That's why sometimes you almost have to consider that certain things in life ought to happen because there is nothing anybody can do about it. And the reason is because you can't do anything about it. Now, see the progression of baby Adolf growing in a family that was struggling, and at the same time a family that went through sadness after sadness after sadness. Now, when it becomes a younger adolescent, he has a father that was tough on him. Now, whether the father was tough to help him so that he doesn't become a vagrant, because there were plenty of those in that time, or the father was tough on him because, of course, you cannot deny the fact that it wasn't just Adolf that was losing sibling, it was also his parents who were losing their children. So it's a family in sadness, and a father that not only trying to provide for the family, but also that's coping to make sure that the young man, Adolf, actually followed a path that would later on be maybe for the good of the family. Because the father couldn't possibly predict he was going to die that early. The father couldn't possibly predict that his wife was going to die soon after. So things were being done to raise Adolf to become an adult so that he can get a better life. But that's not what happened. He went through a series of events that shaped his life, and now at 24 years old, Adolf Hitler went in the military. There he learned to fight. He learned to the hardship of being trained. Now there is some good to it, but interestingly enough, Adolf Hitler joined the military, and soon afterward, World War I broke. Now, talking about someone who has to go through events who shape your life, we did talk a little bit about World War I, but I'll just give a refresher to put this in context of Adolf Hitler. When World War I broke, in the beginning, Germany was, at least there were a lot of victory that Germany had. Adolf Hitler wasn't in power just yet. He was just in the armed forces, he was in the military, and World War I broke, and he was there fighting the war. And Germany had plenty of victory. In fact, Germany had seized quite a number of neighboring countries in the process. But in the end, what ended up happening when the US joined the fight, Germany was defeated badly, and during the Treaty of Versailles, the Germans were slapped with a bill, reparation bill. So they had to pay war reparation to all the countries. Not only had to return those countries back to their rightful owners, but at the same time he had to pay war reparation fee. So the country that Germany went into and to occupy, of course, Germany caused a lot of damages to those countries. So the Treaty of Versailles said that Germany, for what you have done, here's a bill that you have to pay. You have to pay everybody that you have caused harm to. Now, here comes Adolf Hitler. War ended in 1919. World War I ended in 1919, from 14 to 19. And Adolf Hitler, he wasn't even that old, because in 1919, Adolf Hitler was just 20 years old. So in 1919, that was the end of World War I. And Germany in the end lost and was forced to pay reparation fees, war reparation fees. But Hitler saw that as another affront to Germany, of course, extend that to himself. And the reason Hitler felt that way is because he remembered the struggle that he went through, the struggle that he had to go through, and now he finally joined an organization where he could make a difference, which he thought he was when Germany went to war. And at first glance it seemed like that, because by conquering other countries that had, I guess, better way of life, so that would translate into better way of life for at least the soldiers. But fate of event, everything changed, and instead of enjoying a better life, now Germany had to pay fees to the League of Nations for causing damages to other countries. Of course, Germany was doing that, but Hitler wasn't happy. But Hitler used that opportunity to rally a number of other dissenters, because as nationalists, they felt it was wrong for Germany to have to pay anything. It's war, you lost, you lost. So they should not have to pay to anybody. So the young Hitler now start spreading this movement that Germany should not be paying to anyone. And it seems that it's a message that resonated to a number of other people who felt that way, who felt the same way. So Adolf transferred the anger, used the military training he just got, and the experience of World War I, and figured, you know what? That government that we have in power doesn't seem to understand things. Why are they paying? Why should they pay? But Adolf Hitler was a simple corporal. Decorated, I might add, because after World War I, he was decorated, I guess, for his service. Nevertheless, Adolf Hitler believed it wasn't right. But Adolf Hitler had two problems. One, he felt that Germany shouldn't have to pay for any war reparation. And two, he felt that despite the fact that Germany was slapped with a war bill, the rich, the wealthy, wasn't even impacted by it, because they didn't have to pay anything to the government. They were still enjoying life. All the while, the rest of the nation had to pay war reparation fee. That didn't sit well with Adolf Hitler. Perfect opportunity. Anger, struggle, misery, military training, experience at war. Great combination. But his mind was very far from what he had in mind. He wanted, at that point, after, I guess, many years of, I should say couple of years of trying to evangelize whoever lent him their ears about the fact that Germany shouldn't be humiliated that way. And to sweeten the pot for him, Mr. Hitler was appointed the leader of the NSDAP party, which is a German workers' party. He was appointed the leader of the party. That's after the war, of course. Now, he has a platform. He's angry. He doesn't accept the fact that the German government willingly, without any fight, accepted to pay the fine. he felt that the country was being humiliated, so he tried to mobilize other people who felt the same way in order to take hold of the government. In other words, he wanted to overthrow the government in power. Baby Adolf going through sadness, tough parents, homeless, military. Now he is a leader of a party. He has a platform, and he is now able to mobilize people who felt the same way as he did. Nationalists. We German, we cannot accept those things from to be done. We cannot be humiliated that way. At that point, United Nations wasn't the name that was used, it was the League of Nations. So at the signing, Treaty of Versailles, at the signing after World War I, Germany, that was a take it or leave it. There was no option for Germany. Germany lost badly. There was nothing that they could do. So they signed the treaty. So they owe war fee to the League of Nations. Didn't sit well with Hitler. Now Hitler organized a group of people to overthrow the government, not just for the sake of overthrowing, but because he didn't agree with the idea of Germany being humiliated by the League of Nations. He didn't accept the fact that Germany was struggling economically and yet had to pay a fee to other nations, and the government went along with it. So the group of people who felt the same way, they too joined Adolf Hitler in 1923. Adolf Hitler, full-fledged, with everyone who joined with him, attempted a coup to overthrow the government. Here is the making of Adolf Hitler up to this point. So Adolf Hitler, just a couple of years ago, was a soldier in World War I for Germany, came back and was decorated, and later became the leader of the Workers' Party. So from that little baby to that homeless man, now to become the leader of a party, well, Workers' Party, but nevertheless the leader of a party, Adolf Hitler took the opportunity to mobilize a group of people who felt, who were as nationalist as he were, and they went with a plan to overthrow the German government. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to discuss Adolf Hitler now as the leader of the revolution in Germany.
In 1996, a small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy, constantly bombarding the airwaves with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies, presenting to its audience as news, Fox has created an army of blissful ignorance. According to a recent survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore. Join me here on the 4th branch at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday.
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically, I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, The Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
The Obama Legacy.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good
My
read
professor
for both
recommended
liberals
The
and
Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use
I would recommend this book to Barack Obama's tenure.
The Obama Legacy.
I would definitely
is
recommend
a
this
to
book
read.
as a good
My
read for
professor
both
recommended
liberals
The
and
Obama
conservatives.
Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use.
Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance
The Obama
I
Legacy.
would
the
definitely
root
recommend
and
this
stem
book as a good
My
read for
professor
both
recommended
liberals
The
and
Obama
conservatives.
Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama
Today,
Legacy.
I would highly recommend
members
this
in
book
the
for anyone,
Republican
whether for
Party
academic
wear
use.
ignorance, they say, as a badge of the biggest threat to any democracy, while the rest of the country watch powerless. The destruction of a Greek philosopher was once 427 BC said that the world Ignorance
The Obama legacy
is the media is the enemy of the country evil, said Donald Trump. Today, the Democratic Legislative Party wears obstruction as if not going along with everything to any democracy president the country. Watch, our Department of Justice is biased. The destruction of Greek philosopher investigating corruption and Trump administration. Ignorance is the media is the enemy of the country, the United States, said Donald Trump. Today, the Democratic Legislative Party wears obstruction unanswered as if not going along with everything to any democracy president the country. Why our Department of Justice is biased. The destruction of Greek philosopher investigating corruption and Trump administration. Ignorance is the Democratic Legislative unanswered as if not going along with everything to any democracy president the country. Why our Department of Justice is biased. The destruction of Greek philosopher investigating corruption and Trump administration. Ignorance is from the very beginning, so that there is some context when you're making the Democratic Legislative comparison. Unanswered as if not going along with everything to any democracy president the country. Why our Department of Justice is biased. The destruction of Greek philosopher investigating corruption and Trump administration. Ignorance is from the very beginning, so that helps to shape context Adolf Hitler when you make the Democratic Legislative comparison monsters. Unanswered as if not going along with everything to any democracy president the country. Why our Department of Justice is biased. The destruction of Greek philosopher investigating corruption and Trump administration. Ignorance is from the very beginning, so that helps to shape context Adolf Hitler when you make the Democratic Legislative comparison monsters. Unanswered as if not going along with everything to any democracy president the country. Why our Department of Justice is biased. The destruction of Greek philosopher investigating corruption and Trump administration. Ignorance is from the very beginning, so that helps to shape context Adolf Hitler when you make the Democratic Legislative comparison monsters. Unanswered as if not going along with everything to any democracy president the country. Why our Department of Justice is biased. The destruction of Greek philosopher investigating corruption and Trump administration. Ignorance is from the very beginning, so that helps to shape context Adolf Hitler when you make the Democratic Legislative comparison monsters. Unanswered as if not going along with everything to any democracy president the country. Why our Department of Justice is biased. The destruction of Greek philosopher investigating corruption and Trump administration. Ignorance is from the beginning, so that helps to shape context the Democratic Legislative unanswered as if not going along with everything to any democracy president the country. Why our Department of Justice is biased. The destruction of Greek philosopher investigating corruption and Trump administration. Ignorance is from the beginning, so that helps to shape context the Democratic Legislative unanswered as if not going along with everything to any democracy president the country. Why our Department of Justice is biased. The destruction of Greek philosopher investigating corruption and Trump administration. Ignorance the Democratic Legislative one answer as he valued the biggest threat to any was the rest of the country. Why our Department of Justice is biased, the destruction of Greek philosophy investigating corruption and the Trump administration Democrats legislature one answer as he valued the biggest threat in 1996 arrest is why our Department of Justice is biased.
Was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, the Democrats has become the greatest threat as he valued the biggest threat in 1996 arrest is why our Department of Justice is biased. Distortion facts with just 17 million lies presenting today to its audience with over 100 million people watching regularly, the Democrats has become the greatest threat as he valued the biggest threat in 1996 arrest is why viewers our Department of Justice is biased. Distortion facts with just 17 million lies to keep millions of people presenting today to its audience not only prevents false accusation, the Democrats conceals the greatest threat as he valued the biggest threat in 1996 arrest is why Martin Luther King our Department of Justice is biased. Nothing for the world just 17 million lies to keep millions of people presenting today to its audience not only prevents false accusation. Let me finish by saying the democracy is in 1996 arrest is why Martin Luther King our Department of Justice nothing for the world just 17 million lies to keep millions of people presenting today to its audience not only prevents false accusation. Let me finish by saying the democracy in 1996 arrest is why Martin Luther King our Department of Justice nothing for the world just 17 million lies to keep millions of people presenting today to its audience not only prevents false accusation. Let me finish by saying the democracy Join me and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday. Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists,
for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question? One answer is located on the People Branch website, link of which is provided below. See you Saturday at 10:30 a.m. for a very lively discussion. Be there. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch Project, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively to those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. The Fourth Branch Project seeks to emphasize country over party. Its primary objective is to restore interest in civic duty and involvement in social, political issues, discussion, debate, which might impact lives in this generation and quite possibly in future ones. Put differently, the Fourth Branch Project is a journey towards restoring America's greatness, where patriotism is the foundation of every decision, every policy, every word, every action. Said differently, it is a journey to save democracy in America.